Welcome to What's Your Signal, the podcast exploring enterprise networking trends and the secure connectivity that underlies it all. You're joined by me, Taylor Walker, and my co-host, Mauricio Steffen. How's it going, Mauricio?
Good. How's it hanging, Taylor?
It's hanging well, thank you. Um, so, Mauricio, today we're revisiting a topic that we've covered on the podcast before, but it's got a little twist this time, and I'll give you a hint. Do you remember the movie RoboCop?
Of course, right? Half human, half machine, fighting crime, insane accuracy. I hope you're referring to the classic version and not the reboot with what's his name. I don't even remember. It was not that great.
Definitely the classic one. And that one felt so futuristic at the time, like something that could never happen. And yet here we are today with public safety agencies that are testing AI applications to improve policing and emergency response efforts.
Yeah, except for fighting cyborgs, which is a little bit of a disappointment. We're seeing things like voice analytics, data analysis, and even some AI assisted fire responses.
That's right. So today we're joined by two guests, Kinu Masaki, the founder and CEO of Voicebrain, and Jonathan Fischer, the head of global OEM and embedded partners at Ericsson. And these folks have a real pulse on not just AI, but also what it means for public safety agencies. So let's get into it. All right. So, Canoe, welcome. And Jonathan, welcome back. We're looking forward to chatting to you guys about AI for public safety. But first, though, especially Canoe, since you're new to the podcast, we'd love to hear a bit about your journey and kind of how you ended up working in the world of AI.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be a guest. So I'm Kinu Masaki. So my background is I'm a MIT lifer. In other words, I did my undergrad, master's, and PhD at MIT, and studied AI as an undergrad. But during the AI winters, as they call it, I kind of switched more into biomedical engineering, specifically in the field of hearing. But in the last 10 years, there's been such a huge advancement in AI. And I finally realized, you know what? AI is now ready for the general public. And because my passion has always been the intersection of AI and hearing, the sector I really wanted to help were people who use voice as a main form of communication. And specifically, the people I cared about were, people in public safety who uses radios on a day-to-day basis, but they don't have AI as a tool. And that's a group that I wanted to help.
That's a very impressive background. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how your company is kind of leveraging AI for that group.
Yeah. So what VoiceBrain does is we, first of all, capture any critical voice communications, such as radio communication from the police, sheriff, fire, or the TSA. And then we transcribe it, and then we analyze it in real time, and then notify critical key stakeholders when key issues occur that they care about immediately. And then we have this multimodal capability so that we allow people who are on radios and people who are on cell phones to seamlessly communicate with each other on our platform.
Can do the applications that you mentioned are really kind of focused on these like auditory and then like filtering through um, text and some of the vocal pieces. Jonathan, what have you seen other applications in public safety for AI? And I know you've got like that background in public safety as well. And so can you tell us about just some of those additional AI applications in the public safety industry?
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Taylor and Mauricio. So, yeah, we are seeing a lot in the space around computer vision and public safety. So, computer vision is basically taking cameras and making them intelligent, giving you kind of a real time situational awareness. And we're really looking at doing that at the far edge of 5G, if you will. Giving officers the advantage of understanding what's truly happening, perhaps before they arrive on scene, leveraging cameras, maybe at a location, maybe it's a bank robbery in progress, right? That officer could see exactly what's going on, what kind of weapons might be involved, how many people might be involved in the particular incident. Or it could be a fire department responding to an accident, being able to get into a local camera in an intersection and say, okay, it looks like I have 3 vehicles. It looks like I may have a couple of injuries. I need 2 ambulances. I need a rescue truck. I need a pumper because it looks like there's some fluids on the ground or maybe a fire. All those different things that you can gain from that. And it's all being done by a computer and it's telling me, I've been using this kind of concept of a co-pilot. So if I'm a firefighter responding to a scene, it may be talking to me and telling me, hey, firefighter Fisher, on the way to the scene, you have this entrapment, you have 4 people in a vehicle, you have fluids on the ground. It's being able to tell you that real time, based on what it's seeing, and an intelligence based on that. The other things we're starting to see is really a smarter dispatch and response, leveraging technologies like Voicebrain. You'll be able to start doing some triage of 911 calls. So if you have large scale incidents where you need to be able to understand truly what's happening, AI can start to piece together the scene, can really piece together truly what's happening, be able to deduce that down more than the human mind can, and do it much quicker than you and I could do it. Classify the urgency, send the right agencies out there. I remember from my firefighter days, just even like a big ice storm when I lived up north. And we had to have there's a car crash here, there's a telephone pole down here, there's a tree down on a house. Where do you go first, right? So this really kind of helps you triage and get to the emergencies, and really all about saving lives and property.
And I always believed video plus audio is 1 + 1 = 3, right? Because vision AI has always been one step above or faster, I think, than voice AI. But I think now is such a perfect time where both of these 2 commodities can now work together to really help the officers, the people in the field, really, as Jonathan said, as a co-pilot, to help officers, really help them do their job much more efficiently and be much more safer. And so I think this is such an exciting time in the field of public safety.
Absolutely. This might be hopefully not putting you on the spot too much to recall like specifics, but have you heard any anecdotal or like specific stats around like how much time has been saved, or just like some of those really specific benefits of integrating applications like Voicebrain into public safety?
Yeah, so one great example is we have a CRADA agreement with the Department of Homeland Security. And so through that, we've been working with the TSA. And the TSA officer said, now we actually get to events at least 15 minutes earlier because of Voicebrain, right? Because sometimes the officers are very busy. Obviously, there's a lot of different inputs. They don't always, some of the, the head officers don't always have radios with them. However, when key situations occur, in less than a second, Voicebrain is able to alert the key officers so that they could all, number one, communicate seamlessly, no matter what platform they are, and then they can act immediately, right? And so they truly said, you know what? We truly believe Voicebrain will one day save lives. Just because sometimes in these critical situations, a difference of 5, 10, 15 minutes could be the difference between life and death.
Jonathan, how does something like an Ericsson Cradlepoint router integrate with something like a Voicebrain application? Like, what are the different roles there?
Yeah, so we didn't have this functionality when we first started down the path with Voicebrain, but we did have obviously our edge compute on the R1900, and that was kind of the basis of how we started the discussion. And then it was said, hey, we need an audio, the ability for the audio to traverse into the compute space on the device and get that audio back to the Voicebrain cloud. So actually, our engineering team developed an interface using our USB connection to an audio driver running on the router, and then that audio then goes into the container, where that container is able to pick up that audio and then send it back to the Voicebrain cloud. They were also leveraging our NetCloud Exchange, and specifically for security. Obviously, these communications are extremely important and need to be secured end to end. So we're actually leveraging our NCX capabilities for that as well. And so it's comes from a land mobile radio or a microphone into the R1900, into the R1900, through our Docker and container environment on the Voicebrain application, back to the Voicebrain cloud, where that information is processed, and it all happens quickly and seamlessly because it's got to be low latency, it's got to be super quick, because information and data needs to get back to those officers, and that information needs to be acted upon as quickly as possible.
And I think, having AI at the edge is truly game changing and critical for these use cases of public safety, homeland security, because, these officers and people are putting their life at risk, right? And so information, having information immediately without any delays is critical. And also keeping, secret conversations contained and not out in the cloud is also very important. And so, this opportunity to have, Ericsson Cradlepoint integrated into Voicebrain, I think is truly game changing.
Yeah, your comment about keeping information contained, Mauricio, I think you wanted to ask a little bit about kind of that security piece, right?
Obviously, right, because I think beyond all the things that AI can do for us, one of the things that's in the forefront of the public's consciousness when it comes to AI is just the amount of data that it takes to train a model, right? And then also the data that's being ingested. So, obviously, especially when it comes to public sector, both federal, state, local, there's a lot of concerns about privacy and safety. So just wanted to ask a question about how you guys are addressing that in these use cases.
Well, because we are working with, these big homeland security agencies and, public safety, obviously cybersecurity is very important to us, right? And, whenever we do work with these agencies, we get vetted tremendously by these agencies, right? And so,
you're like, they're at my house right now. Yeah.
Exactly. I got fingerprinted. My background check has all been done. But yeah, so definitely, security is key to Voicebrain's core thesis. So.
And Kino, your model, your pre-trained model and neural networks are based upon public safety, right? So, ChatGPT is trained for other reasons. This has been very specifically trained for the needs of public safety, and it knows what to listen for, and it knows, based on its pre-training and long learning lessons, that these are the things to look for and to be mindful of. Shots fired, officer down, those kind of things it's used to listening to that and then taking actions.
That's completely correct, Jonathan. Thank you for bringing that out, because that's very important, right? You think, oh, it's AI, just use OpenAI's general model and it should work. No, that's not the case, right? For public safety, it's very specifically train on radio communication, on these different sectors and these different use cases, so that we can, number one, transcribe correctly, and then we can figure out what are the key situations that these officers care about.
I'm curious, you've both touched on, there's obviously the need to have the right equipment in place, the right software, the right AI models that have been trained. How much is AI actually being adopted in public safety? Is there still a lot of hesitation around it? Are there still like barriers to entry? What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's completely correct. It was so funny. I gave a presentation to a big radio conference. And the first question I asked was, how many of you guys are scared of AI? 99% of people raise their hand, right? And so, when you think about AI, the first things they worry about is, oh my gosh, is my job going to be taken? Can we trust it? Is it going to take over the world and kill us, right? So, those are some big questions that people care about. But, really our goal at Voicebrain is really to provide for AI to be a tool to help them, do their job more efficiently and safer, right? And so, step one is, number one, we just capture and upload into cloud and make this database and transcribe it. That's not going to take over your job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we provide alerts, but we also, whenever we do a transcription, send alert, we not only send the transcription, but we also send the actual voice clip, right? Because we know we're not 100% correct, right? No transcription is 100% correct. So we allow the person to choose, okay, is the transcription correct? Okay, because I now believe in this transcription, these are the actions I'm going to take, right? So we're just giving the tools to the person and not taking over their job. It is true, as people trust AI more and more, right? They'll let us do a little bit more, right? For example, one of the biggest, newest things that people are talking about right now are the AI agents, right? These are AI tools specifically to do different tasks, right? So, for example, one of the agents that we have is this report writing, right? In other words, if you have an incident, you can have an agent just, hey, can you quickly just summarize the incident that happened yesterday with the shooting, right? But again, we're not going to be 100% correct, right? They could look back and make sure, hey, this is correct, this is not correct, and they could fix it, right? And so, it's baby steps, right? You start believing and trusting AI gradually, and then, you allow AI to do more and more things. But again, at the end of the day, it's the officers, it's the people who make the final decisions of what's written, what's done, and the actions taken.
Absolutely. Jonathan, I'm curious about your input on that as well for applications beyond transcription and beyond maybe some of those AI agents, especially if public safety agencies are using AI tools in real time, whether it's for video or like some of the fire applications you were talking about. Are there some barriers to entry there? Is there hesitation to include AI in some of those other use cases?
So yeah, the body worn camera was really the first piece of technology that, other than maybe your two-way radio, that an officer carried, and officers were very resistant to taking on those body worn cameras. Only after a few weeks of carrying it, they realized that it was really about protection of the officer than it was looking at what was really going around, or really this big brother thing. So definitely became that next kid. I think AI will have that same little barrier of adoption. Today they're already recording every transmission. You have your recordings into 911. You have your recordings of all your radio transmissions today, but it's making it intelligent and making it be able to kick off an API that says, hey, send another police car because he's in trouble. He just said signal 13, and signal 13 means everybody within the range of my voice come save me because I'm in a bad place. But perhaps the dispatcher doesn't hear that, or the other officers in the area don't hear that, but the AI can, and it'll be listening continually for that. The other place I see it being used, this kind of this AI for good, right? Enhanced transparency, accountability of the officer, accountability of the people and the citizens that they're working with. Automatically flagging use of force and incidents for noncompliance. Looking for how did that happen. It's not just video, but also the audio components of that. And then, really about cross-agency intelligence. So, something that may have happened here in Florida, maybe happening somewhere else in the United States, and we can start to build really a global database of activities, right? So when we're talking about that pre-trained model earlier that Voicebrain's created, that intelligence that, if it's something seen here once and it's happened somewhere else, you can start to become intelligently aware of what might happen next, right? So a car hits a pole, right? Does that pole have wires on it? Does it have, a big transformer on the top of it? What's going to happen next? So, okay, now call the power company because the power company needs to come and cut the wires down before the officers can safely approach the vehicle. All these
Mhm.
different things that you can now kick off, that you now know what happens next. And so those AI models can really help really intelligently direct maybe a dispatcher or automatically call, Florida Power and Light and say, hey, there's an accident on 95. Go out there and help remove the wires and shut down the power. Or even better, go to the power grid and cut off just that very small section of power to ensure that safety of everybody responding as well as the folks that are involved in the incident.
So, you said that you guys are focusing on public safety use cases. Are you guys looking at all to bridging to outside of public safety? Or if not, are there like use cases that you would see that similar technologies could be used outside of public safety?
Yeah. So yeah, we do not only public safety, but we work with enterprises in general and then Homeland Security. But it really is, what's great is, voice communication, radio communication is a glue of society in some sense. Before I thought, oh, wait, people still even use radios. But when you actually open your eyes and realize, oh my gosh, aviation, FAA, they all use, radio communications, right? Public safety, Department of Homeland Security, all of these different sectors, also, amusement parks, also stadiums, right? All of this is about safety of the people and how do we, correctly react to situations immediately in a smart way, in an intelligent way, with correct people, decision makers being part of that, right? And I think that's where Voicebrain comes in. It really allows for interoperability and accountability and true situational awareness.
The really cool enterprise solution that I think you guys told me about is the one you did with TSA. That's a really interesting one where you can, somebody says something on the radio and that plane might be delayed or you need to do something. Maybe talk about that one a little bit more, Kinu.
So I think this situation was, a officer, head of aviation at an airport was headed home, and he got a notification on his phone from Voicebrain saying, hey, there's a plane in distress, right? Using Voicebrain, he was able to listen in on that radio communication from his cell phone, right? Because his radio wouldn't have worked. And then was able to realize, oh my goodness, my team is in trouble. They're not dealing with it correctly. So he was able to text back on the Voicebrain platform and talk to the people on site at the airport and say, hey, I'm coming back. Don't do anything. Here are the things you should do. And then was able to turn around, go back to the airport and deal with it immediately. And he said that was game changing, right? Because typically he would have found out about it the next day, maybe the next week, right? And, the effect of not reacting to it immediately would have been very different, right? And so, again, being able to truly have seamless communication amongst all the people, not only within the agency, but in some situations, you need interagencies, right? You need the TSA involved, you need the airport involved, you need the sheriff involved. And if Voicebrain is part of all of that, we allow all these different agencies who use different radios, who are on different channels, to seamlessly communicate with each other. So it really is game changing.
How do you envision some of those applications evolving over the next several years? Like I don't know how much you're allowed to say, like what's on the horizon for Voicebrain, but what do you see coming?
What's so exciting to be being in the AI field is it's like changing an exponential rate. I mean, it's probably faster than exponential, right? New AI tools are made on a day-to-day basis. And, once VoiceBrain is able to take your radio communication and upload it into the cloud, now we could take advantage of all these amazing tools that exist out there, right? So, for example, we just kind of previously mentioned this idea of agents, right? Jonathan mentioned this ability to maybe predict what's going to happen. Listening into the radio, I think there might be a riot coming soon, right? Or there's, oh my goodness, I think somebody's trying to shoot the president, right? Or, so that's predictive analysis, right? The ability to now make agents to do these different tasks. Hey, maybe we could figure out where to place the officers in an efficient way so that, you're able to deal with key situations faster, right? Maybe it's a certain part of the city has issues all the time versus others. Maybe let's add more officers there, right? So AI can do so many things, and I can't even imagine all the new tools people are going to come up with AI. But what's great is once we're able to capture all this radio communication, we can leverage any and all of these tools specifically for these public safety sectors.
It sounds like the more you use it, the better it can get.
1,000%, yes.
Which is pretty cool. Jonathan, how about you? Any thoughts on kind of where some of these AI applications for public safety are headed in the next several years?
Yeah, I think it's really the combination of all these different data points coming together, right? So you have voice, you have video, you have sensor data, right? Being able to pull all of that into a centralized location and have the AI be able to tell you exactly what's happening, right? So I was a hazmat officer for almost 20 years as a firefighter. If I could know exactly what methyl ethyl death we were rolling up onto at a semi truck rollover, and I would know that is this particular chemical, and I need to wear this type of protective equipment, and I need to get 5 miles worth of homes evacuated outside of the area. I could know what direction the wind is coming from. I could know what when the next precipitation is coming. I could know there's a creek nearby. All of that information takes time to gather. Now, if I had all of that coming in at once, and I can see that as I'm responding, I can make sure that citizens are safe, my team is safe, that we're responding in the most effective and efficient way, that we're containing that chemical in a way that's appropriate to that chemical, and that ultimately we save the environment, we save our people, we save our team, we all go home safely. So that's where I think this is going. I think it's really about the culmination of so many data points, right? Those data points are oftentimes have to be connected via a cellular device because they're all over the place, right? They could be on a highway on a smart sign up on above the lanes. It could be a camera system where there needs to be connectivity to that camera system because it's out on a pole somewhere remotely. It's all those data points coming together to truly paint the picture and do it in a way that if I had to do it manually and look up in a book, I remember we use these ERGs, emergency response guides, look through that guide, and then go to the NIOSH manual to know that this is what I need to put on for protective equipment, and this is the plume direction. I need to know that I have to evacuate people this direction for so many miles. And this is automatically calculating that real time. I mean, that takes hours for us to actually do that. And that's before we can even go out to start, containing that chemical in some way. So, I'm excited about it. And there's a lot of, we think about the police side of things, but I think safety, rescue, and just general public safety is a real area for advancement.
I think the only downside for me of having these conversations is my partner's a firefighter, and then I go home and I'm like, "Are you guys using this? Why aren't you using this? Why hasn't our city adopted this? Like, I need you to be safer." Um, but on that note, we have taken up a lot of your guys' time today, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us to kind of dive into the implications and the applications of AI for public safety and beyond. So, thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
I like this one. I like talking to Kinu and Jonathan because I think the combination of like Jonathan's in-depth experience in public safety and Kinu's like super in-depth experience in AI like just come together really seamlessly. And I was glad that they addressed one of my biggest concerns going into this conversation was like, are we talking about something that maybe is not really being used yet? Like, are people hesitant to do it? And when Canoe was, kind of going through the transcription through Voicebrain and how that's a benefit, it started to make me think like, oh yeah, I use AI like that, to transcribe a meeting and then have it spit out like a recap for me or spit out like an outline for me. And it's a very similar type of application, and it's helped give me some, I guess, more confidence in AI and makes me more likely to use it for other things, which I think is probably the case for the public safety audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also one of the things that both her and Jonathan addressed was that people tend to have this pessimistic view of AI, right? And it's typically based off of movies, right? RoboCop, Terminator, where AI is run amok or AI is has taken everyone's jobs and AI has done all these things, which I'm not saying that those things aren't a possibility because you never know. But what I am saying though is like right now people look at AI that way, but what they don't realize right now is that AI is just a tool that is available for everyone to better, do your job or better do other activities, right? Is like a prime example that you just gave, right? Is like, I don't know about you or our listeners, but a lot of times I'm double and triple booked for meetings and can't attend all the meetings that I need to attend to. And so AI has been a great way to get that summary of meetings that I couldn't attend, and not necessarily, not that anybody does it on purpose, but if you rely on someone else's notes, they usually have their own spin to them, right? They have their own what they heard, what they understood, and that comes through in their notes. Where AI is just really doesn't have that kind of that slant on the points that it's giving you. So that's a real good thing. And then the other thing I think is a great, this is a great example, especially for public safety, but also for just enterprise in general, right? Is like relying on voice communications does have the ability for the listener to miss things, right? Whether intentional or unintentional. Just as an example, I was in a meeting with someone, and this just happened where they missed the cue that it was, their turn to talk. And so, voice brains could spit out that alert that, hey, you missed this important thing, or, and in the case of public safety, right, is like they use codes, or someone who's in trouble or an emergency can maybe only quickly say something and they can't repeat it, and the person on the other end misses it, and so that could cost seconds or minutes. And so just having that ability that AI doesn't need a bathroom break, it doesn't need to go get water, it doesn't get distracted by their phone, it doesn't get distracted by the dog barking or the guy in the background mowing the lawn. Like, it doesn't get distracted by those things. So it's always listening, always paying attention. And as it gets trained better, we'll start to always understand the difference between something that's a real emergency and something that, okay, this can be summarized and thought about later. So, all of these things are great in the context of public safety, but have broad applicability just across all enterprises and sectors.
I also liked the points that Jonathan was making about data aggregation and how that can help things, and even just like on a real time scale, being able to aggregate conversations that are happening across radios, and that AI, whether now or down the road, can maybe say like, there's a lot of stuff happening like in this part of the city or with this particular type of emergency, and it can, maybe spit out some hypotheses of like what could be going on so that public safety agencies can better prepare for something that's maybe more large scale than a bunch of small things. They can see that bigger picture more easily.
Yeah, 100% right. Is going back to kind of a U.S. national tragedy, right? Is the September 11th, the Twin Towers. One of there was a huge commission that was like, okay, how could this have been? How could they not necessarily like understanding the terrorist attacks and how we can prevent terrorist attacks, but more understanding the response and how can we make the response better and how can we make that. And one of the key issues that was identified was interagency communication. One of the things that came out of that, for anybody listening that's not aware, is FirstNet. So seeing FirstNet was one of the key things that came out of that. But I think Voicebrain can help address some of the other things, is that, being able to correlate different agency conversations about the same event to an incident commander who can have that overall situational awareness. And then on the flip side of that is being able to maybe prepare adjacent agencies that may have interagency agreements for something that they might have to respond to that the other agency hasn't asked them yet. And so, that age, or when they do ask them, they can share the Voicebrain information with them so they can quickly get up to speed without having to take the time of doing, person to person briefings and those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of potential there. Just in things that we've seen in the past to help address that AI can help address.
I agree. Well, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this conversation about AI for public safety, please share it with a friend. Then rate and subscribe to What's Your Signal wherever you listen to podcasts.